Molly here. If you like what we're doing and you want us to keep doing more of it, please hit that subscribe button so that we can get monetized and we can keep bringing you this kind of content and more. It was recommended to us that we watch The Last of Us. So we went ahead and watched The Last of Us. And so far, I will say I've been very impressed with the quality of the television show. The Last of Us is an HBO series based on the video game of the same name. The game and the series begin with an outbreak of a fungal infection that causes people to turn into zombies. Then the story picks up 20 years later. I never played the video game. I am unfortunately motion sickness challenged, and so video games can be difficult for me to play. So instead, we went ahead and watched YouTube videos where people put up gameplay and cutscenes so that we could get caught up with the differences between the HBO show and the video game.
I had an original Xbox and then an Xbox 360. I skipped through the Xbox One, and now we have an Xbox Series. And this was a Sony PlayStation exclusive title, 2013, I think. So this just kind of skipped by us. So we've only been able to judge it based on what it's presenting on television. So far, it's pretty decent. We did try the same genre. We did try the Walking Dead TV series back when that started. And for the first season, if I'm remembering, I think both of us liked the first season of
I really enjoyed the first season of The Walking Dead. When they got on that farm and they were stuck there for what seemed like eons. Yeah, I lost interest and we just never went back. But that first season was enjoyable.
I think so too. And so we've got 2 episodes under our belt here. Like you said, we didn't play the game, so we had to go to YouTube and we found somebody who made several people who they spliced together the cutscenes to kind of make a movie. I can understand both points of view on some of the criticism of this. I understand from a video game purist, they did move some stuff around, but when I watched it, it seemed like the stuff they moved around was mostly irrelevant to the story. So, at least to me, and again, I'm not a video game player of this Last of Us game, but this is a pretty accurate adaptation. I mean, I can't think of a video game movie that's gone from video game to film or TV that's been better than this as far as an adaptation. This seems like it's pretty close. There are some scenes that almost map exactly, because there's some YouTube videos where you can see split screens, and you can see the same scene on the left and the right. And other than maybe somebody's on the left side versus the right side of the screen, it matches up pretty well.
Yeah, it really does. The changes that they did make, I have my own theories as to why they made those changes. The first major one, although I guess most people probably wouldn't consider this major, was the fact that Joel's daughter in the video game had actually bought him a new watch. And then in the HBO version, she took his broken watch and got it fixed for him. So that was a bit of a difference. And I'm not really sure why they did that. Whether or not it's relevant, I mean, we just have to wait and see. But that seemed like an inconsequential change. And I'm not really sure why they did that. Yeah, some of the blocking of some of the scenes, and obviously the neighbors, and fleshing out a story as to how things went down with the initial infection and before Joel's daughter was killed. You know, some of the stuff was different, like the neighbor stuff. But then when he ran into that soldier who killed his daughter, that was pretty faithful. Although, as I recall in the video game, it didn't appear like he was shot. Whereas in the TV show, he did get shot. And it looked like it was probably the same bullet that passed right through his daughter, I would assume. And maybe that was just due to ballistics that they decided to make sure that he was shot too in the TV show. I don't know.
Like you mentioned some of the blocking. You and I had this talk before we made this recording. When Sarah, I think Sarah is the name of the daughter, when Sarah gave Joel the watch in the video game, they were sitting on parts of the couch, left versus right. But in the TV show, they flipped them around. Left is now right, right. They moved the people around so they were on the opposite cushions. Actually, the whole house looks like it was flipped.
Yeah, because the couch wasn't in the same spot in both, because the layout of the house was different.
Now, that's inconsequential. I have no preference one way or the other. I just wonder why some things they did a mostly faithful adaptation on. And I guess this could be considered faithful. It's just, why flip it then? That's not really a criticism. I'm just wondering why flip it. If it wasn't flipped in the game, why flip it in the film?
I speculate it's because the layout of the house was different, so the location of the couch was different. So when Joel walked in to sit down next to his daughter, he was coming from the opposite side of the couch. Now, why the house was different, that I don't know.
When Joel and is it Tommy, is that his brother?
Yeah.
When Joel and Tommy got in the pickup truck and took Sarah and they were driving out when those zombie-like things were running around and they were looking at street signs and that was a pretty faithful to what the video game did. Although, there's a left versus right. When they were driving by this, I guess, neighbor's house that was burning, in the video game, it was on, I think, the left side. Mm-hmm. And in the film, it was on the right side. Or maybe I have that backwards. But it was flipped around, game versus film. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter. Like, again, I don't care. But why flip them around like that?
Well, also, in the game version, it was their neighbor's farm. And not neighbor, but their friend's farm. And in the TV show, it was just his house. So that was a little bit different as well.
And that was episode 1. There was another change at the end there when the two Fedra security had Joel, Tess, and Ellie kneeling down, and they were doing the tests on them. In the game, there was a male and a female officer, if I'm remembering correctly. But in the film, there was only just the one. And it was the same one that they added that scene, which wasn't in the game, where Joel was selling this guy drugs for something.
Yeah, at the beginning.
So the argument I think you made was maybe that was their way of tying it back to that guy with the pill, showing that he knew this guy before. Mm-hmm. But then my assertion back to that was, well, why add that at all other than trying to pad out screen time, which I think is probably why they are doing some of this, because I think the season 1 is supposed to be like 8 episodes long. I'm not sure the game, if you just went through the game, if it would last 8 episodes. So that was a change. Not sure if it's good or bad. Personally, I like the 2 Fedras in the game, but it's not like the one that they did shoot, the scene that did make it in the film. It's not like that was a bad scene or anything. It's just another one of those changes. Like, why make that change? You were being so faithful through that scene. Why make that change?
Well, I think maybe they just wanted to keep Joel and Tess a little bit more morally upstanding, shall we say. This way, they only killed the one guy versus executing 2 Fedra officers.
In the game, and again, I'm trying to remember that it's been a couple of weeks since I watched this. In the game, when they were catching up with Robert, Tess was the one that shot him in the head. But in the film, it was the, I guess, Fireflies. They had some sort of engagement. We didn't get to see it, and he was killed by that engagement. Mm-hmm. So the film tried to clean up Tess a bit by saying, well, but just by not showing her executing a guy in the head with a gun.
Well, also, in the game, they were angry because Robert sold their guns to the Fireflies. And in the TV show, they were upset with Robert because he was selling a battery to them, but instead he sold it to the Fireflies. And then you see it there sitting on the ground when they see him dead, that the Fireflies, he had to shoot out with them. Well, he tried to sell them a bad battery. And I think that's what happened there, that the shootout ensued, and that's how he wound up dead. Which, again, that's less blood on Tess's hands, as far as there's at least 2 people that they did not kill then. That Fedra officer and Robert, they were killed by somebody else. And also, like, the change from they were trying to acquire a battery in the TV show versus the guns in the video game. Again, that was largely due to, in the TV show, they did not want Tess and Joel to be trafficking weapons. And I can see where they're coming from on that, because I prefer they were trying to acquire a battery so that they could get a vehicle going to head out west and find Joel's brother.
But both in the game and in the film, it was okay trafficking drugs. So I don't know. For me, I just didn't understand why they made these changes. But it's not like one to me was worse than the other, but it did soften Tess and Joel a bit as far as making them less gray of characters and pushing them more toward the good side, in quotation marks. At the end of episode 1 and going into episode 2, one of the things we noticed was in the game, when they were heading toward the Capitol building, it was nighttime. But in the film, it was daytime. And probably one of the main reasons they did that, we were speculating, is it's just easier to shoot things with light in the film. So it was easier for the camera to pick up the light so you could see what was going on. We think that's why they did that.
Well, I know I preferred the daytime stuff because I could actually see what was going on. And it was really neat. All the work that they did creating that, I guess, Boston post-apocalyptic, all falling down and neglected. And it was nice to be able to see the work that they put in. I mean, yeah, obviously the video game had that too, but with a TV show, it's different because you're not like running around exploring things. You only get to see what you're seeing on the screen. You have no control over looking right or left or going in any buildings or anything like that. So it is different.
Plus, narratively speaking, you and I, again, we were talking about this. Since those clickers, they don't have eyes anymore. They have to use echolocation. It would have made sense, unless there's some story element they haven't given us yet, to travel during the day because Joel, Tess, and Ellie have eyes, and the creatures, it's irrelevant to them whether it's day or night. So why travel at night? It doesn't give you any benefit going through the cover of night to get through a system. Why? Those clickers can't see. They use echolocation. So I think the film did a decent job saying, well, logically, you'd probably travel during the day anyway, right? It's less dangerous for you because you can see better in the daytime.
Well, as far as clickers go, yeah. I mean, if there's anything else, because obviously in the video game, they were being chased by the Fedra agents, and in the TV show, it was clickers and infected people that they need to be worried about.
Yeah, that's a good point, because as they were escaping, in the game footage that we watched, part of the game was the Fedras were up there with their flashlights trying to find you, and you were going through like sewer tunnels and stuff, or drainage ditches, whatever they were. And the nighttime would have helped with that. Mm-hmm. So in the game, that would make sense because you've got those Fedras looking for you.
Yeah.
Whereas the film didn't cover, there were no Fedras chasing them that I'm aware of.
No, there weren't. Another change that I noticed was in the TV show, now you can only be infected by a bite or from tendrils from the fungus instead of spores. And I did read an article where they talked about why they made that change. And it was due to the fact that they didn't want the actors to be wearing gas masks in the scenes, because obviously that would make it hard to deliver your lines and it would just add a whole new layer of difficulty to filming. So I think that was a smart change. So I can see why they did that. I don't know if that'll affect the story at any point in the future, but for right now, that seems like it was a wise decision.
And there was a big change at the end, the way Tess died. She died in the same building, but not the same way, at least as far as her sacrifice.
I thought it was better in the TV show than in the video game. I can see why people would disagree with me from a purist perspective. In the video game, what happened was that Tess had been bitten. She was infected, and Fedra was hot on their tails. So she surrendered to Fedra so that Joel and Ellie could get away. And so we just know that she stayed behind and waited for the Fedra officers to enter the building. And that was the last we saw of her. We don't know what actually happened. At least not so far.
I mean, was there an assumption that she was going to buy them time by shooting it out with Fedra, or we just don't know?
We just don't know. Plus, we didn't hear any gunshots when we were watching the cutscene footage from the game. So I don't know. Maybe there were gunshots that we didn't hear because we weren't shown that stuff or not. I don't know. But to me, it seemed like she probably was just arrested because I don't think they knew about the other two. They knew at least one person had killed those other two Fedra officers and they were chasing them, but I don't know if the Fedra officers who were chasing them knew how many people they were chasing, if you know what I mean. So I think her surrendering, I don't think that there was a shootout or anything like that. I think she just surrendered and they thought that they had who they were looking for. Whereas in the television show, because they weren't being chased by Fedra, they had actually accidentally awakened the horde of clickers. So they were coming, and since Tess was infected, she knew she was going to die. She dumped what looked like a bunch of fuel all over the floor, and she waited for those infected clickers to enter the building, and they were like right up on top of her. It was actually pretty gross. And during this time, she's trying to get her lighter to light, and it just keeps sparking and sparking. Finally, she did get it lit, and she blew out that whole building and killed all those clickers that had come to attack them. We saw this from the outside. We saw Joel and Ellie several yards away from the building when it blew. And at that point, we knew exactly what Tess had sacrificed. She had taken control of her own death instead of allowing herself to become one of those mindless infected creatures. She had bought them the time that they needed to get away. And her sacrifice seemed so much more proactive in the TV show than just surrendering in the video game. She had a lot of balls in what she did in the TV show, whereas it really doesn't take a lot of balls to just surrender to security. I mean, at least from my perspective, from a storytelling perspective, it seemed like you got more, no pun intended, bang for your buck by how she blew up the building. Plus, everybody likes an explosion, so...
Well, my hope is that in the video game, because I didn't play the video game, my hope is she doesn't come back. Because if she does, this ending that they had in the TV show is not going to be very consistent. So I'm hoping that in the end, the results are the same here. I mean, I understand what you're saying as far as what it did for her character and her sacrifice. Mm-hmm. I'm just hoping that she doesn't come back later in the game, because it'd be hard to explain that in the TV show with such a big explosion. Yeah. But
in the TV show, the way she went out with that explosion and everything, taking out all those clickers, she just seemed like a real badass. And I really appreciated the change that they made to her character. I really, really appreciated it. So I thought that was an improvement. I know some people probably don't, but overall, I really enjoyed the first 2 episodes, and I'm so grateful that this was recommended to us, because there has been such a lack of decent television lately. I tried the Anne Rice adaptations who was it, AMC? Oh God, what they did to Interview with the Vampire and their version of The Witching Hour, they're horrible. I read both book series, and what they've done to those characters is just disgusting. So as far as adaptations go, I feel that of what I've seen lately, The Last of Us has been really quite faithful to the source material, and I really appreciated that. From my perspective, the small changes that they made seem to actually just help flesh out what was already there. The major change of things like, they were trying to get a battery instead of guns, and the way that Tess went out, I can appreciate those changes. Hopefully going forward, they won't damage the story that the video game told that we have not seen yet.
And if there are people out there like us that hadn't played the video game, you don't need to play the video game or had played it to get anything out of this. In fact, it doesn't assume any knowledge. It even, at the very beginning of episode 1, it ramps you up on the outbreak that happened. So you go into this, you don't have to have any background with the video game at all, and the series works fine. I think the people that are having problems with this are the ones who did play the video game, and the things that I think we're both agreeing were changes for the better or were kind of irrelevant, who cares? These people might have had, because they played the game like through 50 times or something.
Yeah.
They might have some emotion tied to, well, why didn't Tess shoot Robert in the head like in the video game? And I can appreciate those people. I'm not in any way trying to diminish those people, but at the same time, most people aren't going to have played the video game 50 times and then look for every little nuance to be the same. So I agree with you. I think this is I cannot recall, with just 2 episodes, but I cannot recall a more faithful adaptation of a video game. I don't know, ever.
I don't think I've ever seen one, no.
And it's fun to do this because when we were watching The Expanse, which is based on a book series, it's kind of hard to pick up the book after you watch an episode and then read it and then go, here's the differences. It has been fun. Every Sunday on HBO Max, we watch the episode. And then right after that, we go to YouTube because it's still fresh in our mind. And we pick up the cutscenes where we left off. So we are comparing mentally the stories between the two. And it's been pretty close. I mean, I was surprised at how well they kept the spirit, the spirit of the game alive in the film or the TV show. I keep calling it film because that's how I'm looking at it.
Yes, I completely agree. And please, no spoilers in the comments.
Yes, as I said, we didn't play the video game. So saying, oh, man, you got to wait till what happens to Joel in episode 5. Like, don't tell me that. Don't tell us that, because we're enjoying this as is. So please don't ruin it. However, after the series is done, we might do a retrospective on it. And then if you want to comment then on what you thought about it, we'd appreciate it. But don't do that now.
I really enjoyed the first 2 episodes of The Last of Us, and I really hope that it keeps going in the same direction.
I think we're both recommending it. If you're somebody who played the game, I would just recommend try to keep an open mind and look at this as a adaptation that's mostly faithful. And if you hadn't played the game, I think you're going to go into this and like it. I think there's smart writing here.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So far, so good. 2 episodes in. Obviously, things could change in a heartbeat. So we'll see what happens this Sunday when the next episode comes out. But right now, I'm just so happy to have something to look forward to, because it's been a long time since I actually looked forward to a weekly show that I could sit down and watch. And I'm grateful, at least right now, I have that again, because it's been so long. Anyway, are you guys watching The Last of Us? And what did you think about it? Did you play the video game? And please, no spoilers.
Take care.